This tutorial focuses on core stabilization and rotational exercises, progressing from the Pallof Press to half kneeling and standing wood chops. Whether you're a golfer, a baseball player, or just your average human, moving your core the way it evolved to move is going to help tremendously with core strength, spinal health, and athleticism. We'll begin with the Pallof Press and focus on resisting rotation using the core. We can do the Pallof Press using a resistance band or a cable machine. Either way, we want our object anchored at around chest height. We're going to have our chest pointing perpendicular to that attachment point. We're going to hold onto it with both hands, arms bent, keeping it nice and close to the chest. And then we're going to step away from the attachment point until we feel resistance. Now we should have a wide stance, a bend in the knees, and we're bracing the legs and the hips. To begin the exercise, we take an inhale, breathing into the lower abdomen, and then we brace the core. From there, we're going to exhale as we extend the arms straight. Inhaling in, exhaling out. Keeping the core braced the whole time, keeping the whole body straight, and resisting the rotation from the band. The half kneeling wood chop evolves from the same concepts learned from the Pallof Press. We're going to start with an anti-rotational variation, and we can do this in either the upward direction or the downward direction. The only thing that changes there is where we attach our resistance band or where we set the pulley on the cable machine. For an upward chop, we set it low. For a downward chop, we would set it high. If you do choose to use a cable machine, take note of the rope attachment and the switch grip used. This is a fantastic way to make this exercise really feel like you're swinging an axe. We're going to be in a half kneeling position for this one, and I want you to drop the inside knee to the floor, other leg steps up. It's also very important to make sure that the hips remain in a neutral position. Try to avoid rolling them forward into anterior pelvic tilt, and try also to avoid rolling them too far backwards into posterior pelvic tilt. We want something in the middle so that our spine remains straight. For the upward direction, we're going to start with that band close to the side of the inside hip. Take an inhale, brace the core, make sure the chest stays pointing forward throughout, and as you exhale, draw the arms up and across the body, maintaining a slight bend in the elbows. Inhale on the way down, keeping that chest pointed forward. Exhale on the way up. For the anti-rotational variation, it may feel like you have more range of motion than you're using, which you do. Again, ensure that chest stays pointing forward. We're trying to resist rotation as we bring that band across the body. The downward chop is very similar, starting with a slight bend in the elbow, hands just above shoulder height, keeping the chest pointing forward, exhaling as we draw the band down and across to the opposite hip. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Once we feel confident with the anti-rotational variation, we can start to actively rotate into the chop, turning our chest towards the attachment point at the bottom and turning away from the chop at the top. For this one, continue to inhale, turning towards, exhale, turning away. You'll be able to get a much larger range of motion and potentially move a lot more weight or use a thicker resistance band. Half kneeling wood chops, both the anti-rotational and actively rotational variations can be performed with a kettlebell and a medicine ball. For a slightly different feel and a different resistance curve to the exercise, but also a slightly more natural movement. Standing wood chops incorporate all the same elements of your half kneeling wood chop, but bring in an element from the lower body as well and a little bit more momentum. This one can be loaded up a little bit heavier and performed with a little bit more power. I'd recommend doing this with a kettlebell. And what we're going to do is start with a bend in the knees, feet about shoulder width apart, maybe slightly wider. And we're going to have that kettlebell resting just outside of one hip. We're going to twist through the core and bring the kettlebell up just above shoulder height on the opposite side. Across and up, down. Across and up, down. Using a slight hinge of the hips with every rep. And the same breathing pattern we've had throughout all the variations we've explored today. This variation can also be done with a medicine ball, and similar to previous variations, could also be done with a resistance band or a cable machine. Personally, I like the feeling of a free weight for the standing wood chop variation. One final variation we'll explore today is the standing medicine ball rotational throw. For this one, we will need a medicine ball, ideally one that's got a little bit of bounce. All right. Some of them are full of sand and won't get that bounce, but can still be used. And for this one, there is more of a lower body component. In order to initiate the rotation for this movement, we're actually going to pivot on the back toes and internally rotate the hip. This already puts the trunk into slight rotation, which loads the movement and gives us a lot of power when we want to throw that medicine ball. So we initiate by internally rotating the hip, loading the movement, and then throwing the ball. Once the leg is internally rotated, the throw should happen by twisting the core, then following through with the arms. So there you have it. Several different variations of anti and actively rotational movements for your core that get you moving your spine the way it evolved to move. I trust as you progress through these exercises, you're going to start to feel not just strength and mobility, but power and stability in your spine and your core overall. Remember to progress slowly and incrementally. As always, I trust you enjoyed the tutorial and wishing you very well. Similar to some of our earlier variations. Fuck.